Hey guys, new spot. I usually record like right behind me. As you can see, just like literally right there. That's where my camera stand is. But I decided to try something different, try something new, because I'm going to start streaming soon. Some of you were there during my first stream, which had horrible technical difficulties, but y'all were there, y'all supported. It was great, and I really appreciate it. But today I just thought randomly, because I really do need to start posting much more frequently on this channel, and I just saw Aquaman. This might be a long video, it might not be. We're all gonna see. Charlie, you're gonna see, my editor. Because for people who don't know, I love the first Aquaman. I've talked about it a few times. I made a video on it. I made a dialogue dive on it like a long time ago. It's one of the worst performing dialogue dives that I've ever done, because obviously that movie's dialogue, the first Aquaman's dialogue, was terrible because that whole movie was terrible. And I admit that. I acknowledge it, and I love it, because the first Aquaman, honest to God, feels like a CW film that was given like $40 billion just to look pretty, because that's what it was. And I saw that movie 3 times in theaters, and you would never think it, because again, all I talk about on this channel is like how to write correctly, the principles of, you know, high class writing, you know, execution, narrative dissection, and analytics. But just because you know how to write well does not mean you can't appreciate fun, stupid slop. And that's all Aquaman 1 was. It was just a fun action adventure. You just didn't have to take it seriously. Half the characters looked like they were pulled out of like Power Rangers with like the mech suits and stuff like that. I mean, it was really bad, but so good. And I saw Aquaman 2, like I think 2 days after it came out, specifically because I thought to myself, I need to see this movie because it's the sequel to one of my favorite superhero movies of all time. And I think one of like the only really well grossing like DC movies in the entire series. I think most DC movies like have lost money. I might have put that in my last video, but Aquaman 1 made like $1 billion. I went to see Aquaman 2 knowing full well that the Rotten Tomatoes scores was like in the 30s, if not like the 40s. I said, I don't care, because of course it's going to be terrible. It's freaking Aquaman. And I went to see this movie, and it was terrible, but not in like the way that I wanted. It was still very pretty. It was cool, but there was definitely something lacking from the first one. And I think that was just the overall spectacle in size and scale. So for those of you who haven't seen the first one or forgot about it, which, you know, watch it again. The entire point of that movie was Arthur trying to become himself, which ends up being the king of Atlantis. He's fighting against his half-brother, Orm, who is Ocean Master. By the end of the movie, there's this like monumental battle, like the likes of which really hasn't been like depicted aside from like Avengers Endgame with like Thanos versus like all the Avengers. That final battle is such a huge, massive visual spectacle that is kind of like the tail end and culmination of this really bad movie that it almost makes up for it all, because you're just watching like a huge kraken fight against like sharks with laser shooting out of their eyes and like mer people. Like the underwater fights are phenomenal. And I think that's a lot of what I was expecting out of this one, because I was like, I'm going to sit through all this nonsense for a third act that's going to blow me away. And I sat through it, and the whole movie is kind of like a buddy cop film. It's literally just Aquaman hates being king, but he teams up with his brother Orm, and who he breaks out of prison because he's like, Orm is the only person that can like help me track down the villains. And the villain is kind of like a lich that's been trapped inside of a trident that Black Manta from the last movie gets his hands on. He has taken over Black Manta, and he's like, yeah, the villain's plan is we're going to melt the polar ice caps, because the polar ice caps are actually what has been keeping the evil army trapped for all these years. To do that, they're like, yeah, we're just gonna speed up global warming by pumping a bunch of pollutants and toxins in the air. So if you think that things couldn't get more ham-fisted in Hollywood and straightforward, there you go. The villain's literal plan is to do global warming. And the buddy cop comes from Orm and Aquaman have to work together to stop the villain. And Orm's like, I'm a terrible person, I'm gonna go back to jail when this happened, but at least I want to be king. And Aquaman's like, being king is horrible, why would you want to do this? You obviously know that they're going to become friends at the end of the movie. That's not even like up for debate because of how simple and stupid the movie is. But the problem is they didn't even like start out the movie as really like enemies. Like they tried to like have Orm betray Aquaman 40 minutes into the film by like bringing him to basically like undersea pirates and like the mafia. But then it turned out like that Orm didn't even betray him. They just needed to actually go there and like do those things. I don't know. But Orm, like the whole film, there's no conflict around whether or not the villain from the first movie, who was like essentially trying to be redeemed, would actually fail in his redemption. Every opportunity for him to fail redemption, he overwhelmingly succeeded and became good. I really thought that Aquaman was going to like give up his title as king because he just complained about it non-stop. But they just like, yeah, Orm, you can go away. We'll just say you died in the accident, like in the final battle, right? You got crushed. We couldn't find your body. And Orm's like, cool. And I guess like at the end of the movie, they just show him on land buying a burger, and he likes roaches now. Orm eats roaches, Ocean Master. And this is like a whole thing with like Aquaman's like, oh yeah, human cuisine is like we eat bugs and they're super delicious. And because the movie's stupid, he's like, you're right. And he like shoves a roach in a burger and he's like, ah, the burger is better now. I know it sounds like I'm talking like it's like a South Park sketch, but it's not. This is like actually the movie. Like it's just a bunch of nonsense that happens. One of the actors in this movie, kind of like the main henchman, kind of like the audience insert. Randall Park honestly might be one of the best parts about this film, not because his character is fantastic, but because a large part of his character and his inclusion in the film is him just reacting to the strangeness and idiocy of everything that's happening around him. It's just the issue is there was no actual like conflict for the main characters to get into. What I mean is that Aquaman doesn't really do anything in this entire movie. Every time Aquaman does anything, he gets saved. It's almost hard for me to talk about this movie because of how much of nothing actually happens in it. I was still entertained, and I got it on discount because I still have my student ID, which I go to movie theaters and I'm able to like actually pay less. There was no third act huge battle. I mean, there was like a battle, but it was like nothing compared to what the third act of the first Aquaman did. That last fight of the first Aquaman was one of the greatest battles I've ever seen like on the big screen. And I was going into this one thinking, this is the sequel. They know where their bread is buttered. They're going to do it again. And they didn't.
You know, I have one simple request, and that is to have sharks with frickin' laser beams attached to their heads.
It was still cool. I would still recommend people to go see it if you don't care about being like talked down to. But like the movie itself, yeah, that was a choice. If you want me to talk about specific stuff with that movie or any other movie, I'm gonna try to do like a lot of these because it's really easy now, because all I have to do is sit down, click record on OBS, and I could do something here. I'll probably still do the other ones behind me. But yeah, I'll probably talk about this more because like, yikes, that was a movie. So if you enjoyed, check out the links below. I'll leave links to my website for editing services, for my books, for my Patreon, for my TikTok, all the social medias. As always, it was a pleasure, and I'll talk to you all again soon.